Section 20 of The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 2 by Xueqin, translated by Henry Bancroft Joly. Chapter 35, Part 1. Bai Yu Chun tastes to the lotus leaf soup. Huang Jingying skillfully plaits the plum blossom nut nets. Baochai had, our story goes, distinctly heard Lin Daiyu sneer, but in her eagerness to see her mother and brother, she did not so much as turn her head round, but continued straight on her way. During this time, Lin Daiyu halted under the shadow of the trees. Upon casting a glance in the distance towards the Yihongyuan, she observed Li Gongcai, Ying Chun, Tan Qin, Si Chun, and various inmates wending their steps in a body in the direction of the Yihong court. But after they had gone past, and company after company of them had dispersed, she only failed to see Lady Feng come. How is it, she cogitated within herself, that she doesn't come to see Baoyu, even supposing that there was some business to detain her? She should also have put in an appearance, so as to curry favor with our venerable senior and Madame Wang. But if she hasn't shown herself at this hour of the day, there must certainly be some cause or other. While preoccupied with conjectures, she raised her head. At a second glance, she discerned a crowd of people, as thick as flowers in a bouquet, pursuing their way also into the Yihong court. On looking fixedly, she recognized Dowager Lady Jia, leaning on Lady Feng's arm, followed by Madame Xing and Wang, Mrs. Zhou, and serving girls, married women, and other domestics. In a body, they walked into the court. At the sight of them, Daiyu unwittingly nodded her head, and reflected on the benefits of having a father and mother, and tears forthwith again bedewed her face. In a while, she beheld Baochai, Mrs. Xue, and the rest likewise go in. But at quite an unexpected moment, she became aware that Zijun was approaching her from behind. "Miss," she said, "you had better go and take your medicine. The hot water too has got cold." "What do you, after all, mean by keeping on pressing me so?" inquired Daiyu. "Whether I have it or not, what's that to you?" "Your cough," smiled Zijun, "has recently got a trifle better. And won't you again take your medicine? This is, it's true, the 5th moon, and the weather is hot. But you should, nevertheless, take good care of yourself a bit. Here you've been at this early hour of the morning, standing for ever so long in this damp place, so you should go back and have some rest." This single hint recalled Daiyu to her senses. She at length realized that her legs felt rather tired. After lingering about abstractly for a long while, she quietly returned into the Xiaoshan lodge, supporting herself on Zijun. As soon as they stepped inside the entrance of the court, her gaze was attracted by the confused shadows of the bamboos which covered the ground, and the traces of moss, here thick, there thin, and she could not help recalling to mind those 2 lines of the passage in the Xixiang Ji. "In that long look someone saunters about. White dew coldly bespeck the verdant moss." Wen, she consequently secretly communed within herself, as she signed, had of course a poor fate, but she nevertheless had a widowed mother and a young brother. But in the unhappy destiny to which I, Daiyu, am at present doomed, I have neither a widowed mother nor a young brother. At this point in her reflections, she was about to melt into another fit of crying, when of a sudden the parrot under the veranda caught sight of Daiyu approaching, and with a shriek, he jumped down from his perch and made her start with fright. "Are you bent upon compassing your own death?" she exclaimed. "You have covered my head all over with dust again." The parrot flew back to his perch. "Xue Yan," he kept on shouting. "Quick, raise the portiere. Miss is come." Daiyu stopped short and rapped on the frame with her hand. "Have his food and water been replenished?" she asked. The parrot forthwith heaved a deep sigh, closely resembling in sound the groans usually indulged in by Daiyu, and then went on to recite. "Here I am fain these flowers to inter, but humankind will love me as a fool. Who knows who will, in years to come, commit me to my grave?" As soon as these lines fell on the ear of Daiyu and Jizhuan, they blurted out laughing. "This is what you were repeating some time back, miss?" Jizhuan laughed. "How did he ever manage to commit it to memory?" Daiyu then directed someone to take down the frame and suspend it instead on a hook outside the circular window, and presently entering her room, she seated herself inside the circular window. She had just done drinking her medicine when she perceived that the shade cast by the cluster of bamboos planted outside the window was reflected so far on the gauze lattice as to fill the room with a faint light, so green and mellow, and to impart a certain coolness to the teapoys and mats. But Daiyu had no means at hand to dispel her ennui, so from inside the gauze lattice she instigated the parrot to perform his pranks, and selecting some verses which had ever found favor with her, she tried to teach them to him. But without descending to particulars, let us now avert to Xue Baochai. On her return home, she found her mother alone combing her hair and having a wash. "Why do you run over at this early hour of the morning?" she speedily inquired when she saw her enter. "To see," replied Baochai, "whether you were all right or not, mother." "Did he come again, I wonder, after I left yesterday, and make any more trouble or not?" As she spoke, she sat by her mother's side, but, unable to curb her tears, she began to weep. Seeing her sobbing, Mrs. Xue herself could not check her feelings, and she too burst out into a fit of crying. "My child," she simultaneously exhorted her, "don't feel aggrieved. Wait, and I will call that child of wrath to order. For were anything to happen to you, from whom will I have anything to hope?" Xueqin was outside and happened to overhear their conversation. So, with alacrity, he ran over and facing Baochai, he made a bow, now to the left and now to the right, observing the while, "My dear sister, forgive me this time. The fact is that I took some wine yesterday. I came back late, as I met a few friends on the way. On my return home, I hadn't as yet got over the fumes, so I unintentionally talked a lot of nonsense. But I don't so much as remember anything about all I said. It isn't worth your while, however, losing your temper over such a thing." Baochai was, in fact, weeping as she covered her face, but the moment this language fell on her ear, she could scarcely again refrain from laughing. Forthwith, raising her head, she sputtered contemptuously on the ground. "You can well dispense with all this sham," she exclaimed. "I'm well aware that you so dislike us both, that you are anxious to devise some way of inducing us to part company with you, so that you may be at liberty." Xueqin, at these words, hastened to smile. "Sister," he argued, "what makes you say so? Once upon a time, you weren't so suspicious and given to uttering anything so perverse." Mrs. Xue hurriedly took up the thread of the conversation. "All you know," she interposed, is to find fault with your sister's remarks as being perverse. But can it be that what you said last night was the proper thing to say? In very truth, you were drunk. There is no need for you to get angry, mother, Xueqin rejoined, nor for you, sister, either. For from this day I shan't any more make common cause with them, nor drink wine or get about. What do you say to that? That's equal to an acknowledgment of your failings, Baochai laughed. Could you exercise such strength of will? Added Mrs. Xue. Why, the dragon too would lay eggs. If I again go and get about with them, Xueqin replied, and you, sister, come to hear of it, you can freely spit in my face and call me a beast and no human being. Do you agree to that? But why should you too be daily worried, and all through me alone? For you, mother, to be angry on my account is anyhow excusable, but for me to keep on worrying you, sister, makes me less than ever worthy of the name of a human being. If now that father is no more, I manage, instead of showing you plenty of filial piety, mamma, and you, sister, plenty of love, to provoke my mother to anger and annoy my sister, why, I can't compare myself to even a four-footed creature. While from his mouth issued these words, tears rolled down from his eyes, for he too found it hard to contain them. Mrs. Xue had not at first been overcome by her feelings, but the moment his utterances reached her ear, she once more began to experience the anguish which they stirred in her heart. Baochai made an effort to force a smile. You've already, she said, been the cause of quite enough trouble, and do you now provoke mother to have another cry? Hearing this, Xueqin promptly checked his tears. As he put on a smiling expression, when did I, he asked, make mother cry? But never mind, enough of this. Let's drop the matter, and not allude to it any more. Call Xueqin to come and give you a cup of tea, sister. I don't want any tea, Baochai answered. I'll wait until mother has finished washing her hands and then go with her into the garden. Let me see your necklet, sister, Xueqin continued. I think it requires cleaning. It is so yellow and bright, rejoined Baochai, and what's the use of cleaning it again? Sister, proceeded Xueqin, you must now add a few more clothes to your wardrobe. So tell me what color and what design you like best. I haven't yet worn out all the clothes I have, Baochai explained, and why should I have more made? But in a little time, Mrs. Xue effected a change in her costume, and hand in hand with Baochai, she started on her way to the garden. Xueqin thereupon took his departure. During this while, Mrs. Xue and Baochai trudged in the direction of the garden to look up Baoyu. As soon as they reached the interior of the Yihong court, they saw a large concourse of waiting maids and matrons standing inside as well as outside the antechambers, and they readily concluded that old Lady Cha and the other ladies were assembled in his rooms. Mrs. Xue and her daughter stepped in. After exchanging salutations with everyone present, they noticed that Baoyu was reclining on the couch, and Mrs. Xue inquired of him whether he felt any better. Baoyu hastily attempted to bow. I'm considerably better, he said. All I do, he went on, is to disturb you, aunt, and you, my cousin, but I don't deserve such attentions. Mrs. Xue lost no time in supporting and laying him down. Mind you, tell me, whatever may take your fancy, she proceeded. If I do fancy anything, retorted Baoyu smilingly, I shall certainly send to you, aunt, for it. What would you like to eat? Likewise inquired Madame Wang, so that I may, on my return, send it round to you. There's nothing that I care for, smiled Baoyu, though the soup made for me the other day with young lotus leaves and small lotus cores was, I thought, somewhat nice. From what I hear, its flavor is nothing very grand, Lady Feng chimed in laughingly, from where she stood on one side. It involves, however, a good deal of trouble to concoct, and here you deliberately go and fancy this very thing. Go and get it ready, cried Dowager Lady Jia several successive times. Venerable ancestor, urged Lady Feng with a smile, don't you bother yourself about it. Let me try and remember who can have put the motes away. Then turning her head round, go and bid, she enjoined an old matron. The chief in the cookhouse go and apply for them. After a considerable lapse of time, the matron returned. The chief in the cookhouse, she explained, says that the 4 sets of molds for soups have all been handed up. Upon hearing this, Lady Feng thought again for a while. Yes, I remember, she afterwards remarked. They were handed up, but I can't recollect to whom they were given. Possibly they are in the tea-room. Thereupon she also dispatched a servant to go and inquire of the keeper of the tea-room about them. But he too had not got them, and it was subsequently the butler entrusted with the care of the gold and silver articles who brought them round. Mrs. Xue was the first to take them and examine them. What, in fact, struck her gaze was a small box, the contents of which were 4 sets of silver molds. Each of these was over a foot long, and 1 square inch in breadth. On the top, holes were bored of the size of beans. Some resembled chrysanthemums, others plum blossom, some were in the shape of lotus seed cases, others like water chestnuts. They numbered in all 30 or 40 kinds, and were ingeniously executed. In your mansion, she felt impelled to observe smilingly to old Lady Jia and Madame Wang, everything has been amply provided for. Have you got all these things to prepare a plate of soup with? Hadn't you told me, and I happened to see them, I wouldn't have been able to make out what they were intended for. Lady Feng did not allow time to anyone to put in her word. Aunt, she said, how could you ever have divined that these were used last year for the imperial viands? They thought of a way by which they devised, somehow or other, I can't tell how, some dough shapes, which borrow a little of the pure fragrance of the new lotus leaves. But as all mainly depends upon the quality of the soup, they are not, after all, of much use. Yet who often goes in for such soup? It was made once only, and that's at a time when the molds were brought. And how is it that he has come to think of it today? So speaking, she took the molds and handed them to a married woman to go and issue directions to the people in the cookhouse to procure at once several fowls, and to add other ingredients besides, and prepare 10 bowls of soup. What do you want all that lot for? Observed Madame Wang. There's good reason for it, answered Lady Feng. A dish of this kind isn't, at ordinary times, very often made, and were, now that Brother Baoyu has alluded to it, only sufficient prepared for him, and none for you, dear sinner, you, aunt, and you, Madame Wang. It won't be quite the thing. So isn't it better that this opportunity should be availed of to get ready a whole supply, so that everyone should partake of some, and that even I should, through my reliance on your kind favor, taste this novel kind of relish? You are sharper than a monkey, Dowager Lady Jia laughingly exclaimed in reply to her proposal. You make use of public money to confer boons upon people. This remark evoked general laughter. This is a mere bagatelle, eagerly laughed Lady Feng. Even I can afford to stand you such a small treat. Then, turning her head round, tell them in the cookhouse, she said to a married woman, to please make an extra supply, and that they'll get the money from me. The matron assented and went out of the room. Baochai, who was standing near, thereupon interposed with a smile. During the few years that have gone by since I've come here, I've carefully noticed that sister-in-law Secunda cannot, with all her acumen, outwit our venerable ancestor. My dear child, forthwith replied old lady Jia at these words. I'm now quite an old woman, and how can there still remain any wit in me? When I was, long ago, of your man-like cousin Feng's age, I had far more wits about me than she has. I bet she now avers that she can't reach our standard. She's good enough. And compared with your Aunt Wang, why, she's infinitely superior. Your aunt, poor thing, won't speak much. She's like a block of wood, and when with her father and mother-in-law, she won't show herself off to advantage. But that girl Feng has a sharp tongue, so is it a wonder if people take to her? From what you say, insinuated Baoyu with a smile, those who don't talk much are not loved. Those who don't speak much, resumed Dowager Lady Jia, possess the endearing quality of reserve. But among those with clipped tongues, there's also a certain despicable lot. Thus, it's better, in a word, not to have too much to say for one's self. Quite so, smiled Baoyu. Yet, though senior sister-in-law Jia Zhu doesn't, I must confess, talk much, you, venerable ancestor, treat her just as you do cousin Feng. But if you maintain that those alone who can talk are worthy of love, then among all those young ladies, Sister Feng and cousin Lin are the only ones good enough to be loved. With regard to the young ladies, remarked Dowager Lady Jia, it isn't that I have any wish to flatter your Aunt Xue in her presence, but it is a positive and incontestable fact that there isn't, beginning from the 4 girls in our household, a single one able to hold a candle to that girl, Baochai. At these words, Mrs. Xue promptly smiled. Dear venerable senior, she said, you are rather partial in your verdict. Our dear senior vehemently put in Madame Wang, also smiling, has often told me in private how nice your daughter Baochai is. So this is no lie. Baoyu had tried to lead old lady Jia on, originally with the idea of inducing her to speak highly of Lin Daiyu. But when unawares she began to eulogize Baochai instead, the result exceeded all his thoughts and went far beyond his expectations. Forthwith he cast a glance at Baochai and gave her a smile, but Baochai at once twisted her head round and went and chatted with Zhe. But of a sudden, someone came to ask them to go and have their meal. Dowager Lady Jia rose to her feet and enjoined Baoyu to be careful of himself. She then gave a few directions to the waiting maids, and resting her weight on Lady Feng's arm, and pressing Mrs. Xue to go out first, she and all with her left the apartment in a body. But still she kept on inquiring whether the soup was ready or not. If there's anything you might fancy to eat, she also said to Mrs. Xue and the others, mind you, come and tell me, and I know how to coax that hussy Feng to get it for you as well as me. My venerable senior, rejoined Mrs. Xue, you do have the happy knack of putting her on her mettle. But though she has often got things ready for you, you've, after all, not eaten very much of them. Aunt, smiled Lady Feng, don't make such statements. If our worthy senior hasn't eaten me up, it's purely and simply because she dislikes human flesh as being sour. Did she not look down upon it as sour? Why, she would long ago have gobbled me up. This joke was scarcely ended when it so tickled the fancy of old Lady Jia and all the inmates that they broke out with one voice in a boisterous fit of laughter. Even Baoyu, who was inside the room, could not keep quiet. Really, Zhe laughed, the mouth of our mistress Secunda is enough to terrify people to death. Baoyu put out his arm and pulled Zhe. You have been standing for so long, he smiled, that you must be feeling tired. Saying this, he dragged her down and made her take a seat next to him. Here you've again forgotten, laughingly exclaimed Zhe. Avail yourself now that Miss Baochai is in the court to tell her to kindly bid the Ying'er come and plait a few girdles with twisted cords. How lucky it is you've reminded me, Baoyu observed with a smile, and putting Harry's book, his head out of the window. Cousin Baochai, he cried, when you've had your repast, do tell Ying'er to come over. I would like to ask her to plait a few girdles for me. Has she got the time to spare? Baochai heard him speak, and turning round, how about no time? She answered. I'll tell her by and by to come. It will be all right. Dowager Lady Jia and the others, however, failed to catch distinctly the drift of their talk, and they halted and made inquiries of Baochai what it was about. Baochai gave them the necessary explanations. My dear child, remarked old Lady Jia, do let her come and twist a few girdles for your cousin. And should you be in need of anyone for anything, I have over at my place a whole number of serving girls doing nothing. Out of them, you are at liberty to send for any you like to wait on you. We'll send her to plait them, Mrs. Xue and Baochai observed smilingly with one consent. What can we want her for? She also daily idles her time away and is up to every mischief. But chatting the while, they were about to proceed on their way when they unexpectedly caught sight of Qiang Yun, Ping Er, Xiang Ling, and other girls picking balsam flowers near the rocks, who, as soon as they saw the company approaching, advanced to welcome them. Shortly, they all sallied out of the garden. Madame Wang was worrying lest Dowager Lady Jia's strength might be exhausted, and she did her utmost to induce her to enter the drawing-room and sit down. Old Lady Jia herself was feeling her legs quite tired out, so she at once nodded her head and expressed her assent. Madame Wang then directed a waiting maid to hurriedly precede them and get ready the seats. But as Mrs. Zhou had, about this time, pleaded indisposition, there was only therefore Mrs. Zhou with the matrons and serving girls at hand, so they had ample to do to raise the portieres, to put the back cushions in their places, and to spread out the rugs. End of section 20.